Well, it seemed like it was going to happen, and then it didn't seem like it was going to happen, and then it finally happened. Last night, the United States House Republicans advanced a budget resolution, 217 to 215. It squeaked through. That clears the first step to delivering that big, beautiful bill that President Trump would like in his first-year legislative agenda. Here to discuss what exactly happened last night is Congressman Andy Biggs. He represents Arizona's 5th Congressional District, and he cares about how the government spends your money, so he's the perfect guy to talk to. Congressman, good to have you back with us.
Thanks, Vince. Good to be with you.
The back and forth last night, it came down to the wire, but Speaker Johnson able to get this thing across the finish line. What are the divisions, if any, among Republicans right now?
Sorry. Yeah, so what you've got going is you've got a bunch of spending hawks, and we want more cuts, right? Because you got a massive deficit and a massive debt. And then you have some folks that don't want to touch various aspects of the government for reducing. Some of them are their own personal pet kind of programs. Some of them deal directly with subsidies, for instance, to maybe something in their district or not. And some just don't want to do any cuts. That's the dynamic that you have there. And then what overarching all that, Vince, which makes it really colorful and interesting, is you really have a one-vote margin.
Uh-huh.
So that's what. So last night, what was going on? We could lose because there was one Democrat not on the floor. We could lose. You could get one no and one present.
Uh-huh.
That's all you could have. So that gives you the dynamics both process-wise and policy-wise.
So in the coverage I've seen of this, they say it's a budget resolution which recommends sort of broad cuts to a variety of committees in the House, and that they're going to have to work out the details later. This resolution, now that the House has passed one, does that mean that the House and Senate begin working on what specifically they're going to spend money on?
That's correct. So this is a reconciliation. In order to reconcile, it's with instructions. So every committee has instructions. Some committees have only the ability to cut, and because they have more jurisdiction. For instance, ENC is told you have to cut $888 billion out over the next 10 years. And then you have others like Judiciary that I sit on, where they say you're going to have to fund like $110 billion to help pay for the border security programs. But then we're expected to find, I don't think all that, I think it's like $35 billion because we don't have as much jurisdiction to reduce funding. So every committee that has a jurisdiction of any kind is going to get, you have to do spending cuts, and some of us have to find a way to plus up so you can fund certain programs that we're expanding on, like border security.
You mentioned, I think you used an acronym to refer to it, the House Energy and Commerce Committee.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And that's okay. And you mentioned that they need to achieve $880 billion in savings over a 10-year period. That need to make cuts to that effect. That's how Congress works with these reconciliation bills. It's over 10 years. And I've noticed that the left has used that detail as a basis to say that Republicans are cutting Medicaid. This is the way they talk about it. And the reason, as I understand it, is because that committee does deal predominantly, they have jurisdiction over Medicaid, and that might be the place where you have to find savings. It's such a big program. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, doesn't Medicare and Medicaid have over $100 billion in detectable fraud every year? If you were to get control of just the fraud, that's $1 trillion in savings.
Yeah. In fact, Vince, we've been told it's actually even higher than that. So there's massive amounts of fraud that go on there, and just a normal reduction of fraud you might not be able to get it down to zero, but to get it down, let's say, by 75%, well, now you've taken care of $750 billion of your problem.
Yeah.
And then they have a whole bunch of other programs. Energy and Commerce has probably the widest jurisdiction in the United States Congress, so there's a lot of programs that they have. Don't forget, there's a lot of waste going on throughout this government that they can get at as well. So yeah. But your finer point, and I agree with this, is the left is trying to craft a narrative to scare the bejeebies out of Americans. But we know what should scare the bejeebies? Even with the cuts that are proposed in the House version, which is a lot more than the Senate version, you still will have a structural deficit of a roughly $2 trillion a year, and you're still approaching $60 trillion plus of national debt hanging over your head in 10 years.
Yeah, it's a horrific debt problem. Can you tell us about President Trump's priorities? What's involved here in terms of what he's been able to get through so far, at least in this resolution? I know one of his priorities is no tax on tips. He doesn't want taxes on Social Security checks, which, by the way, makes a lot of sense to me. How many times can you tax the same exact money over and over and over until you have none of it? What does the president get here out of this whole thing?
Well, so he's getting the things that he wanted. There's no debt. There won't be a debt ceiling, which it took me a long time to get there, but Congress acts like there's no debt ceiling anyway, Vince. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Right.
So that's one. So he gets this whole tax package in place, and it looks like he wants it permanent. I don't know if it gets there permanently, but it's a really, really extended time period before you revisit it. When I say extended, I think maybe the entire 10 years is the way that they ended up structuring that. But again, that's up to the Ways and Means Committee.
You're talking about the Trump tax cuts.
Yeah, the tax cuts plus the additional tax programs that he wants.
Got it.
And then you're also getting the money that $175 billion, I think, is where that came in for the border security, and that's for 10 years, and that should take care of all of it. But we need to get that money going like right now because they're running out of money over there, which is preventing all these deportations because they're running out of resources. And then the other thing that he doesn't really want, but you have to admit that you're buying this off, is there's some more money going into the Pentagon. Now, does that stay there after you get the Senate and the House reconciling this together? I don't know, but they want about $100 billion or $150 billion to the military, which has never passed an audit, never passed a clean audit, Vince. So
yeah, and they want to do that. Secretary Hegseth saying that he wants to get that achieved, get an actual audit passed, and weren't they looking to cut 8% of the Pentagon's budget? Wasn't that the number? They want to try and pare this thing down a little bit. And there's definitely money to save.
There's definitely money to save. And what Secretary Hegseth has said he wants to do is 8% per year. And that's a compounding. So like, let's say it's $1 trillion because it's almost $1 trillion now. You take 8% off, so the next year you're at 920. So you're going to take 8% off the 920. The next year you're moving down, and so you're now about 864, something like that, and you just keep taking it down. And so at the end of the period, you're going to have like a $580 to $620 billion budget, and it'll be very efficient and lean, we hope.
Yeah. So what do you make of President Trump's efforts to stimulate the tax revenue and the economy, obviously, and to cut taxes and to try and get control of this debt? He's definitely not given up on this issue. I mean, he cares about it, even proposing this week this idea of giving out $5 million gold cards to people who want to immigrate to the United States and give us a lot of money to help pay down our debt. What do you make of the president's efforts right now, Congressman?
Well, he came out very clearly this week in this cabinet meeting and said that he wants a balanced budget as soon as possible. So it means he recognizes that the national debt is a security threat, which is, by the way, legislation that I run every year. It is a national security threat. But beyond that, it tells me that he's willing to go in and make some hard decisions, because we're going to have to make some hard decisions. I mean, when you tell an agency you no longer exist, that's a hard decision, and it makes me hopeful. But I think he understands that we're at an existential point, an existential crossroads, and he's trying to deal with it. And I've told him myself, I said, you will be, for sure, he's already going to be a historical president. But you get us and lay the foundation on us economically that'll last a couple of generations, then you will have your face somewhere near Mount Rushmore. Or you're going to have a new you're not going to be Trump Tower, but you're going to have a Trump monument somewhere.
Yes.
Because the reality is he's changing the culture, the economy, and taking us back to smaller government. And that's he's invigorating federalism for Pete's sakes, and that turns us back to what we're supposed to be, a republic, a constitutional republic, not a national government.
I've seen some people who are concerned about government spending poo-pooing the Doge, that they're just nitpicking. They're picking small stuff. They're not cutting enough. Why are we even concerned about this? It's really about entitlement spending. I'm kind of encouraged, actually, by Doge. I think it's a useful audit of the way the government's been spending money, a lot of it out of our sight completely. What do you think of this Elon Musk-run operation?
Well, I'm all for it. I think people need to remember that even he's fishing in a smaller pond. That's for sure. It's about 25 to 30% of the overall federal government spending. But what, should we just ignore that? No. I mean, this is where a lot of corruption goes. I mean, you and I were just talking about the fraud and waste in, say, the Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. Yeah. Believe me, there's a ton of fraud and waste going on there, and to the extent that he has found literally trillions of dollars of unauthorized spending over the last 10, 15 years. That's right. And Congress goes through that every year, but we've never been able to get all of that data because the bureaucracy stonewalls us. They don't want to give us that information. So we know it. We can estimate it. The IGs, the inspectors generals, can do the same. The government accounting office can do the same thing. But he's getting in there. They're going in actually tracing the numbers, and that's how you find this stuff.
Lastly, Congressman Andy Biggs, you and I have talked quite a bit over the years about Republican leadership, specifically in the House. I've noticed that both the House and the Senate, they do seem to be moving. There does seem to be forward progress on Trump's agenda. In the Senate, in particular, John Thune is shepherding the Republicans there to get all these nominees passed at a pretty good pace, actually, relative to historical norms. How are you scoring Speaker Johnson's role right now as the leader in the House?
Well, I think we should have been doing this. What we're doing now, we should have done a month ago. But he is moving it forward. I'm glad he's moving it forward. But we just need to get pedal to the metal. Right now is a particularly precarious time, Vince, and that is where we have our bill out. The Senate has passed a bill out, and now we have to see what the Senate's going to do with our bill. Are they going to accept it and fiddle around with it and go to a conference committee or what? It's a precarious time, and this is going to be these guys, both Thune and Johnson, they really need to get this together so that next week we're actually making more progress on it. This not, what I'm saying. Don't take your foot off the gas pedal now. Now's the time to put the hammer down and really, really rocket the car.
Another lesson that the president's proving from the White House every day. Hey, thank you very much, Congressman Andy Biggs. Always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you for that insight.
You bet. Thanks, Vince.